Are you ready to fight like a champion, not just in the courtroom, but in every facet of your life? Welcome to the Legal Athlete Podcast. I'm Jess Sargus, your host, high performance speaker, and coach for trial lawyers. With over 22 years as a trial attorney and legal exec, and an undefeated record as a former MMA fighter and boxer, I know what it takes to thrive in high stakes environments. I also know that in both the courtroom and the cage, you're only as good as your wins. That's why I'm here to help you develop a fighter's mindset, discipline, and strategies so you can master your mental game and execute under pressure to win more and burn out less. Every week, I fuse insights from elite athletics, legal pros, and cutting-edge neuroscience and sports psychology to help you perform at your peak under pressure. So whether you're looking to reinvent your practice, your mindset, or your life, this is the podcast for you. It's time to become a legal athlete. Let's get it. Welcome to the Legal Athlete Podcast. Joining me today is Dean Soukeras, Zen Master of Scaling Success. Dean is the CEO and founder of Zen to One, a transformative coaching company that helps founders scale not just their businesses, but also their mindsets. Dean graduated law school and practiced real estate law in New York before deciding to change directions and reinvent his career. He founded a tech company that grew to $40 million in revenue, and then went on to found two more startups before landing a role at Meta. Today, Dean has reinvented himself yet again from a seasoned tech entrepreneur to an executive coach who shares what he's learned through success and failure about building and scaling high-growth businesses. Dean's unique approach blends the high-stakes world of business growth with the grounding principles of Zen practice, arising out of his decades of experience as an avid Zen practitioner and meditation practitioner. Now, Dean's insights aren't just for founders. They hold powerful lessons for trial lawyers who navigate their own high-stakes environments daily. Having built and scaled high-growth companies himself, Dean understands the relentless pressure and burnout that come with striving for success. His work now focuses on helping leaders reconnect with their core values, align their actions with those values, and create the permission structures that allow for innovation, play, and sustainable growth. In this episode, we're going to explore what the Zen mindset and the art of scaling businesses can teach trial lawyers and all of us about reinvention, overcoming burnout, reconnecting with your purpose, and thriving in your practice. So if you've ever felt like your actions are out of sync with your values or wondered how to unlock the energy and freedom to experiment and grow, this conversation is for you. Prepare to discover the Zen of trial lawyering. And welcome, Dean.
Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Very kind words. Really appreciate it. We tend to not value our own stories enough, and so when I hear that and you walk through it, it sounds impressive. It sounds
Yes.
like, and I'm sure all of us have similar stories if we just took the time to step back and really observe and absorb everything we've done in our lives. It's pretty phenomenal when you think about it and you take the time to appreciate it.
I think that's so true. And, I've been impressed with you from first discovering you. I found you on Threads actually one day because I was reading a thread and I'm like, oh man, I don't even need to post now because Dean's just got it. Like I totally was so aligned with what you were saying. It really resonated. So I reached out. I'm so glad that I did. And I think what you said about recognizing, our own accomplishments, it's hard from the first person. And there was actually a funny video I saw today that said, are you not doing well, or you just keep raising the bar for yourself?
Yeah.
So I think as perpetual bar raisers, it's easy for overachievers to underestimate their accomplishments because we're always looking forward.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the challenge is for high achievers, for people that are ambitious, and I think that the vast majority of your listeners are ambitious people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be where they are. There's always good and bad to everything. The positive is when you're ambitious, you make a lot of changes in your life. You make more money usually. You tend to be more satisfied in what you're doing. The challenge comes when that ambition becomes an obsession. And to your point, right, it's never enough. And so
Mm-hmm.
what became as started off as an ambition becomes something negative, toxic, and the next thing you know, we chase the next thing in front of us. I know as a founder, and maybe this is not as relevant to the trial lawyers, but maybe it is, where for me, when I'm founding a business or even when I'm looking at different ideas, so many things seem interesting and cool. And oh, wouldn't that be nice to try? And wouldn't that? And the next thing you know, instead of focusing on the one thing or even the two things, you're spread across five or six.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way that you're going to get traction or move forward, even as a curious person, because you're never going to be able to put the time and energy into five or six things to make any of them succeed. So that's part of the challenge for people who are ambitious is to scale down first, right? Dig down. I like to say dig down before you can scale up, because without that focus, without that clarity, you're just not going to be able to succeed in the long term.
I think that's really true. That's such an important point. And the parallel I draw to trial lawyering is, law is a vast study. You practice in the area of real estate, but there's a lot of people, particularly solo practitioners or small firm owners, who don't want to turn away business. So, they may practice in multiple areas, and while there's great things about that, it's very hard to be a master of every subject area and really feel like you're able to give it to your best. So I think that's one challenge in trial law that's similar. And also, even as you're preparing for trial, there are these very rich stories when you get to know your client incredibly well, and you want to tell them, and being able to go through a process to hone in on what really matters. What do I actually have to establish, and how do I simplify it so that that really comes through is one of the biggest challenges I think in preparing for trial as well, is how do I make this as simple and clear as possible, but still include everything that I need to. And both in building a new business and getting ready for trial, there it's easy to get obsessed. So, so I want to turn this a little bit into, a focus on a topic that is near and dear to my heart and my industry, I know in yours, about burnout.
Mhm.
So, from your experience as a tech entrepreneur and now a business coach, how do you define burnout, and what role do you think misalignment in our core values and actions plays in causing burnout?
Yeah, and I'll say that I think it's becoming more and more of an issue, definitely in the tech field,
Mhm.
where people are being asked to do more with less. And I had never gone through burnout myself. I'd heard about it. I always questioned it. Kind of going back to, does it exist until you experience it yourself?
Mhm.
Because once you do, you understand that, hey, this is a real thing. This isn't being tired, right? This isn't, I need a long weekend, right? This is something down to your core. And the way I first experienced it about almost a year ago now, working at Meta. And I didn't know what it was at the time because I never had experienced it, gone through it before. And, people would say, oh, you're working too many hours. You have to, don't work on the weekends, don't work late nights. Why don't you take a vacation? And my thought was that that should fix the problem because in the past, when I was tired from work, it worked.
Mhm.
But this time, right, it just didn't work because the problem wasn't that I was working too hard or too long, even though, right, everybody needs to set those boundaries for themselves and respect them.
Mhm.
It was that the work that I was doing was not aligning with my own core values. And so what I like to say is we all have our why, which is why do we want to work?
So
Why do we want to
important.
do the work we do? And then we have the work. So when our why and our work align, things feel great. Like when I'm starting a new business, when I'm having fun, I can be working, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and it's not tiring me out because I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. I'm playing. It's like right now with my new the executive coaching business, it's I can spend 5 hours just learning, experiencing, communicating, and then the next thing it's time for dinner. And time goes by like that. And we all know what happens when time is just going so slow and we're not enjoying the work we're doing and it's dragging and you just want it to be done. That's not a great state to be in. And so when I was going through my burnout and I didn't want to get off of the couch, I just went from working to the couch, flop down, put on Netflix, and I just wanted to zone out. It
Mhm.
was hard for me to do anything else. And for me, at Meta, I'm a product manager. I was a product manager. The parts of product management that I loved were speaking with people, solving their problems, collaborating with other teams. More of as an entrepreneur, I like to think higher level strategic. And so the work that I was doing at Meta was so detail oriented, like getting down into, and I did have a lot of legal aspects because a lot of the work that I was doing was based on contracts that the company had. And obviously, I didn't stay a lawyer. So reviewing contracts was not why I became a product manager. So it was no longer my why was not aligning with my work. And on top of that, I had a manager who was a micromanager. And I remember one night at 8 p.m., she was going through a document with me, asking me to move colons and changing sentence structure, and just completely oblivious that it was Friday at 8 o'clock. And it was just a very tough time for me. And it took me a long time to kind of get out of that. And so getting back to your original question, for me, what is burnout? It's just this misalignment between why we want to work and what we love about our work and what we're actually doing day to day.
Mhm. I think that's so important. And what you've described, I want to make sure that people know that burnout is both a physical sensation, so like exhaustion as well, but it has real like, neuroscience and cognitive effects where there's some cognitive fog. It takes you longer to do things that normally, if you weren't in burnout state, you could do pretty quickly. It's demoralizing because you are taking the feedback on I'm not doing this as well or as fast as I normally do, and it's a loop that ends up having real decision fatigue and all of those aspects where just like you described, the only thing that you want to do is lie down and zone out, and you
Right.
can't even enjoy your pastimes. You can't enjoy your interactions with people as much because you're in this state of too much.
Right.
And one other thing that I'd like to remind people is that it's an affliction of the strong and the motivated. It's not that you're lazy and you can't do much. It's that you've gotten so good at taking on so much for so
Mhm.
long that you keep taking on more and more, and not giving yourself that essential rest and recovery that's vital for anyone, whether you're using your brain, whether you're using your body, or really both. So I
Yeah.
think acknowledging that it's real and that a lot of the cognitive fatigue that goes from having an experience at work that's like play to one that's burning you out, is that misalignment in your core values. And the management is also a huge part of it. I think one of the best ways that you can eliminate the benefit you get from a high achiever is to micromanage them, is to take away the sense of autonomy and challenge that they get from working more independently. So, I think you had a perfect storm there of the
Yeah.
misalignment and the environment. But what helped you kind of figure out um, uh, how to get back to your core value compass? How does
Yeah.
someone or how did you begin the process of identifying your core values when you're feeling that disconnection?
Yeah. And I think that having that 20 years of Zen
Mhm.
has certainly helped. It's
Mhm.
it's kind of like you don't want to start thinking about how do I heal? How do I get through this while you're in the middle of it? So it's all about laying that foundation work of going to personally going to Zen every week, all right, doing the meditation daily, building that strong foundation, that balance, that sense of self, your core beliefs. Now, when everything is feeling right, when things are going well, not when things are falling apart, because it's so much harder to do that kind of self introspection, building work when things are not going well. So you have to know that it's there for you, that you've done the work, and you can lean on it now. Because if you haven't done the work, that's not the time to start.
Yeah.
That's survival mode. So it's just getting through that part of your life. And I had noticed, and for me, it was, hey, I've had all of this training. Why am I feeling like this? Like this is ego. I should be able to get through this. Like, why am I letting my manager get to me? Why am I letting this work? Thinking I could just power through it spiritually, emotionally, physically, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So
I,
many of us think we can outwork burnout.
yeah, yeah, I
Not
tried. It
the
doesn't
way it
work.
works.
Yeah. So it wasn't, you don't burn out instantly,
Mm.
right? You don't go from everything's great to I'm burnt out. It's a slow crawl. And just like it was slow getting there, it's slow getting out. And like with anything else, it's just a step-by-step process. You
Mm.
have to identify what the problem is, which it took me longer than, probably I would have liked when I finally realized, hey, I'm burned out. This is what's going on. Did some research and then trying to understand what the problem is and trying to understand how do I start moving out of it. And there's different ways. For me, what helped the most was I did take a trip. I took a week off and I went to go visit a friend in Nova Scotia. And it was a cabin on a lake, very relaxing, but it wasn't getting out of the environment because I was still exhausted being there, surrounded by beauty. Being in nature was definitely very soothing, very calming. But it was seeing this friend who I had not seen for maybe 5 or 6 years. And it's different than seeing a friend or family member that you see often because he looked at me and he said, what's wrong with you? Like, what happened to the Dean that I knew 5 years ago who was full of energy, excitement, joy? And seeing the reflection of Dean through him woke me up. Like, what
Mhm.
am I doing? So having somebody in your life that can kind of cut through the noise, cut through the story that you're telling yourself in that moment, certainly helped me understand, hey, what I'm doing isn't working. Things need to change. I need to come up with a plan. Yes, I have to keep doing this for some period of time, but what's my action plan? And get back to the dean who was um, more action oriented, energetic. And I knew that it wasn't going to be instant. And I knew that as soon as I got back, I was going to be back into this difficult place, this difficult time in my life. But at least I knew at that point, hey, I know there's a way out, and I'm willing to take that first step.
Mhm. So key. And I think you're really right and lucky to have a friend like that. I think having that community and perspective, sometimes our friends, particularly long-term friends, but any good friend can see us and our struggles a little bit more clearly than we can because we're so close to it. And like you said, you can't just rely on that in the moment when things have gone wrong. You need to have that relationship that you developed over time, or at least, before the moment that you need it, so that you can call on it when things get tough. And that's great to have that friend and that perspective for you. Um, I, I think probably that helps you, and tell me if I'm on track here with giving you that initial aha moment that maybe your mindset about what you were doing, or what you were ensconced in at work needed to shift. For for a lawyer, or for anyone, a founder who seems like they're stuck in a current routine, and getting burned out, or in burnout, what mindset shifts can you recommend to help bring them back, or rethink their practices, and seize the courage to reinvent their personal and professional lives?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I'm sure just like in entrepreneurship and business and technology from the legal side, one thing you said there that really resonated before was there's probably a lot of um, lawyers out there have their own practice. And to your point, say, hey, I'm going to take anything that walks in the door because I need to make money. And that may be true. Um, Now, if you go to larger firms, um, they may love what they do, trial lawyers, but I'm sure it also varies case to case, client to client, where some cases and some clients just resonate more than others. And you may or may not have the choice on what you want to work on. But what you can do is start to bring a light and some introspection and some reflection on not only, hey, what don't I like about this case or this client, but what do I like about these other situations I've had? So, what brings you happiness? What brings you joy? What brings you satisfaction? What brings you energy? Because you can instantly tell when you're speaking to somebody, like, or if you see somebody calling on the phone and you look at your caller ID, and all the energy either drains out of your body when you see who it is, and we've all been there, or you have that smile when you see somebody, hey, I really want to speak to this person. Obviously, the less we speak to the people that drain us, the better for us, the better for our energy, our minds, our lives, our businesses. So it's comes down to our choice, right? We can take all the clients, we can take all the business that's out there, and that's an option, right? There's no right or wrong here. It's just how do you want to live your life? So that's always one thing that I like to tell my clients, which is create that list. Like that's step one is what are your core values? And
Mhm.
you can probably come up with five, you can come up with 10. And if you're having trouble, right, this is where I like to brainstorm and talk with different AIs like ChatGPT or Anthropic and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here's some of my core values. Let's have a conversation on where I am and coming up with that list of, I would say, five core values and prioritize them.
Mhm.
And that's going to change over time. This is not set in stone.
Yeah.
Like who I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago is not who I am today. And there's times where I was more than happy to work 20 hours a day, building up a business. That's just not who I am anymore. I'm being much more thoughtful in who I work with, what I do, and quite honestly, because I have the luxury where I can do that.
Mhm.
So if somebody wanted to work those long hours and that's one of their core values is, hey, I need to work hard. I need to buy my house. I need to take care of my family, whatever the case may be. That's great because that's not going to drain them. That's not going to exhaust them um, because there's a real purpose behind it.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing it just to do it, that's where you're going to run into problems. So that's the first thing I suggest to people. And I'm wondering if you have ever done that, Jess, like created your own list.
Yes, it's one of my key activities. I do it at least annually, but more often than that, because like you said, it's a living and growing experience. And I like to be very intentional about how I'm spending my time, particularly as I've grown older and again had the luxury of trying to make more intentional choices about it. It's a key part of how I figure out where I need to go next. And like I've reinvented my career a number of times, both within the legal community and the legal profession and without it. The through line for me, one of my consistent core values is my love of growth. And whether it's my personal growth or business growth, the through line is I wanted to grow or I wanted to help something grow in a particular way. And other core values, a lot of them have stayed the same, but there are some, as you know, that change as there are different phases and seasons of our lives. So I fully agree with that practice. I think it's important that you have a good idea about what your core values are, what your purpose is too. That's for me, that's a key aspect of my spirituality, my practice is what is my purpose here? And is what I'm doing aligning both with my values and my purpose. And when I find that I'm in alignment with that, even if I'm doing some things that I like less than other things, I'm happy and I'm getting energy and I'm sharing it in a way that is of the best service to others as well. And when I'm out of alignment with that, it's a painful experience. It's emotionally and physically painful. And like you said, when you're in that zone, you can't enjoy your hobbies. That's the times that I've been in burnout. I've lost contact with movement and exercise
Yeah.
and all of the things that are the sort of base level of keeping your mental and physical machine running without throwing dirt in the gears.
Yeah.
So so I think that's exactly right. Core values and identifying those is a really key thing to do. And another thing I've worked on, I think I have a innate help from my nature of just wanting to challenge myself. But a lot of my career path and reinvention has taken courage. And I think you'll agree it took courage for you to change directions, reinvent your career and your businesses. And I think for people listening, who want to be able to figure out, how to get on that path that's more aligned with their core values, um, how do they find that courage? What can they connect with to give them that fire to make a change, even the small changes to get them closer to that alignment?
Yeah. I think courage is key. And I was recently speaking to a couple of friends, and they have both been in their current jobs for about 20 years.
Hmm.
Neither of them likes their job. It's just they're scared to make a change, which I get, especially having been out of searching for a job for that long. But I'll say one thing that, well, a few things that resonate with me from Zen and kind of stick with me when I'm thinking through things. Number one is, right, everything that we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? That statement alone is just odd, right? We tell ourselves about ourselves because our mind just doesn't stop. It likes to create, that's what it does. And we listen to it while it creates conspiracy theories, right? I wish there was a fact checker in there that would say, no, that's not right. Um, because it makes up stories.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, we believe those stories as fact. And more often they're not. Uh, One of the things my Zen teacher would say was, so he'd look at me, right? I'd sit down. He was this who's this funny, smart, intelligent, big guy, ex-Marine, grew up in Brooklyn. And here he is, a Zen teacher. And he had an interesting story.
I bet.
And he would say, who is Dean? Right? He kind of booming voice. And I'd say, well, I'm a husband. He's like, no, that's your marital status. Who is Dean? I was like, well, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a founder. He's like, no, that's what you do for a living. Who is Dean? And you just go through this litany of this list of who you say you are, right, in your own mind. When somebody at a party, somebody asks you, and you just go through that list. Well, I live here. Well, that's where you live. That's not who you are.
Mhm.
And it's a question that can't be answered, right? It can only really be felt.
Mhm.
So who are you? And you feel that. It's just impossible to turn that into words so that
Yeah.
somebody can understand. But if you
Yeah.
have that feeling and you're doing something that is misaligned with that feeling, you know it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I shouldn't be doing this. And yet you do it. And usually nothing good comes from that point. So when we come to these points and it's, how does this feel?
Mhm.
And it's really going deep down, right? Because we have these sensations of excitement, of fear, but it's how does this feel for me? So I like to check in often, and it helps with meditation because during meditation, people think it's peaceful,
Mhm.
and it can be, but it's a struggle and it's a battle sometimes where you are constantly having thoughts pop up. You get itchy. You don't want to sit for another 10 minutes. Um, but the more you can do it, following that breath in and out, the closer you can get to kind of that peaceful, non-thinking state. And maybe it lasts a second, maybe it lasts 5 seconds, maybe it lasts a minute. But even Zen masters who have been practicing for decades, thoughts pop up. That's just what the brain does. It's a matter of, do I decide to give that thought my focus and attention, or do I let it just go? So when we do something or somebody criticizes us, we think about it obsessively. But when somebody says something nice to us, it's like, oh, that's nice. And then we move on because we want that self-criticism of what did I do wrong? How could I have done that? And we just berate ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's not helping anybody. So
No.
I would say for folks out there, right, it happens, right? We all make mistakes, but they are so few compared to what we do right every day that we don't treat in the same way with the focus and attention and kindness and caring and compassion that when if a friend came to you and said, hey, I made this mistake, you'd be like, don't worry about it. Like it's not a big deal. But if you make that mistake, it's like the end of the world. So I think, in this talk about who we are and what we do, it's also having that self-care, that self-compassion, and allowing yourself to make that mistake, to try new things, even if you say, hey, Dean doesn't do this, do it anyway, right?
Mhm.
Try it out. You don't know what Dean does until you actually give it a try. So I know you and I have spoken about this. Like I've run lots of different experiments with my business, with myself. Um, and it gets back to the sense of play, right? So we're here to have fun. And if that's missing from your business, from your work, from your life, it's just going to make things a little bit harder. So why not try to have fun?
I love that. I think fun is so important. Fun is how we get in those flow states, where time passes like uh, like that. I think that's so important. And one thing you've just said, a lot of things resonate with me. One thing that you said when your Zen master was trying to help you identify, who is Dean, the idea of paying attention to what's going on, what are the feelings inside. A neuroscientist who I love, Dr. Tara Swart, she's a professor at MIT now. She talks about interoception of getting a sense of the emotions and feelings going on in your body, which are one of our best guides to am I on the right track? Am I not? And when you first started giving your master labels, You know, those are true things. Those are facts, but they're not core sensations too. And I think it's so important when we're trying to get in touch with who we really are and get that sense of play, also to not necessarily use the labels we think are expected of us,
Mhm.
of those outside defining what values we think we're supposed to have. It's great, and people want to be good people. People want to be respected and admired. And so sometimes I think we go down a certain path because we want to make people proud of us. We want to be respected and admired. And some of those things might not necessarily be the things that actually make us feel good and feel playful in what we're doing. So going on that sort of playful idea, you talked before about permission structures that allow for experimentation and play. Can you explain a little bit more about what those are and how they can help leaders and entrepreneurs and lawyers align with their values?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about permission structures because we have to work in an environment where we feel free and supported to try new things. And that may be difficult in some work environments, but that doesn't mean that you as an individual still can't take advantage of that and give yourself the permission to do that. Sometimes it's going to be within the confines of work, and I've done that. And other times it's going to be in your life. So I'll give an example on both. So as a product manager, there's a part of the job called the discovery. It's different than what's in the legal field.
Mm.
Discovery is basically what problems are out there that I can try to help solve. It's that high level. And so I go ahead and I look at the market and I speak to a bunch of people and I say, okay, that seems like an interesting problem to me. There's a lot of problems out there, but it's like, it's not only discovering what the problem is, what's the problem that I want to work on? And so that's giving yourself the permission structure to be selective, to give yourself enough respect and value to focus on the things that resonate with you as opposed to trying to do something to please somebody else.
Mhm.
Because that's how a lot of us work. I certainly have in the past, and it still creeps in now and again. It's like, okay, so how do I please my manager? How do I please this person who, has, makes decisions that affect my life? It's natural. It's biological. You have a tribe and you have somebody that's hired from you, and it just makes sense for survival instinct to treat them well. But that's very different from doing things that please you. And so we tend to put those secondly. And so it comes down to giving yourself the permission, the ability to take risks. Now, that doesn't mean uh, your actions have to be risky. It's just you have to take risks with yourself to try new things that, hey, you may not like. And that's fine because failure is something that is both feared, but at the same time wonderful because it's the failure where we learn the lessons. And in technology, we have something called, fail fast.
Tell me a little bit more about that, about how we can use fail fast as a way and a permission structure for play.
Yeah, and I think that fail fast is something that is tried and true in the technology community, and I think that it is universal. It can work in any part of your life. It's a matter of being willing and able to take risks.
Mm.
And some people are more amenable to taking risks than others, but I'll just say it doesn't have to be risky, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's asking you to go to Vegas and bet all your money on a slot machine. But maybe some people are uncertain about visiting Europe, right? Because they're scared about, hey, it's a different culture, it's a different language. And I know people like that. And my instinct is always, you don't know until you try it, right? So minor personal idea, because I do believe that travel and the experience of other cultures really helps people grow exponentially. So I would say, what part in your life, right? It could be work, it could be health, it could be diet, it could be anything that family, any place and anywhere in your life that you can try something different. Because when we just do the same thing over and over again, we get bored. We get tired, we get lazy. Believe me, it's easy to just sit on the couch and watch 10 hours of Netflix. And there's space for that and there's times for that,
Mhm.
but you wouldn't look back and say, "Oh, I'm glad I did that." Right. But if you went out and you went to hike some sort of, for me, like I'll go to the Catskills up in New York, or I'll go out east on Long Island to go to the wineries, that's the day you're going to remember. So it's about just taking these things that you wouldn't normally do and trying them. And it can be at work. And I honestly believe that everybody listening to this and every employee out there should have some sort of side hustle going on.
Mhm.
What can you do that is unique to you, your unique voice, because everybody has their own experiences that you can bring to the world? Because in today's world, and I just saw this the other day, a bunch of more layoffs at different companies where I know very talented, hardworking people being impacted and came out of the blue, and there's nothing to fall back on. So I think that we're leaving a world where we can just rely on somebody else, an employer, a manager, to have control over our livelihood, our future. And I know that's just been the way of things. But I think we're also in a world where we have videos and social sites and media and newsletters and blogs that give us all a platform that we can take advantage of to share our perspective. Now, people are scared to do what you're doing, right? Have this podcast, put yourself out there. And I'm sure it wasn't an easy choice at the time, but you did it. You tried it, you took a risk, and you get to speak to wonderful people on your podcast.
Sure.
You learn, they learn, your audience learns, and you created that because it was important to you and you wanted to bring yourself to the world and offer something that nobody else was, and you did.
Mhm.
And I'm sure everybody listening has something that they've been thinking about in the back of their mind, even if they won't admit it to anybody else, that they want to try. So that's the permission structure we're talking about. And you have to get to the point where you're going to say to yourself, let me try it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But you're going to learn so much in the process.
Mhm. I love that. I love it. And thank you, Dean, too. I love that idea of focusing on what you uniquely not only enjoy but can bring to the world. I think that is so powerful and such a huge ripple effect too, in terms of not only the changes that it can make in your life, the positive changes, but everyone who sees you doing that or is benefiting from the things that you bring to the world. I think that's wonderful. Um, I, I don't want to take too much of your day to day, but I would love to know a couple more things. Maybe drawing on your practice and experience, particularly in Zen, and meditation. What are some practical tips that you can recommend for entrepreneurs or for lawyers who want to try to balance the pressures of scaling and growing their business or their practice and then still maintaining that alignment with their personal values and infusing their life with a sense of play and a sense of generous service?
Yeah. And I think that that's a great thought in bringing out who you are as a person
Mm-hmm.
and not who others want you to be, or even who you want you to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we pretend to be things that we're not doing ourselves any favor. And going back to burnout, that's also where burnout comes from, is when we try to do things for other people or for this concept of Dean should be this, Dean should like this, but that's not what I really want. So when you try to force yourself to do something for whatever reason, it could be external, it could be internal pressure. It goes back to your mind, and that your mind does lie to you. It tells you a story, and it wants you to believe that story that, hey, until this happens, I can't be happy. Well, no, that's not true. I could be happy right now. I'm choosing not to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so this goes back to from a Zen perspective of ego. And I
Mm-hmm.
like to say, from the ego perspective, we could call ourselves terrible, right? I'm terrible at this. I'm no good at this. I can't do this. Like that's all ego. On the other side, we could say, hey, I'm the best at this. I'm great at this. Well, that's also ego. And ego likes to play that type of trick. And my Zen master would often call ego the trickster because ego would get in to try to trip you up, to try to get you to do things that were not aligned with who you are. And the good news there is that, right, if you go back to different mythologies, right, the trickster liked to play tricks, but the tricks always taught a lesson. And ego always teaches a lesson. You cannot get to enlightenment in Zen or liberation in Zen without the ego. It is your best ally in trying to get to where you want to be because it will show you where you don't want to go and where you don't want to be. So, yes, you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to try things that are not for you, but that's how you learn what is. So, when we're talking about trying things new and taking risks, if you try to do it for the wrong reasons, it's most likely not going to work. Like I would not say to somebody who comes to me and says, hey, I want to be rich, so I'm going to start a business. Well, it's not going to succeed. Like that's not the motivation that is going to keep you going. It's not the motivation that is going to keep you iterating and changing the concept and talking to people and learning from them. You have to bring this natural curiosity, this empathy, this compassion to the people you work with, the customers you have, the people you want to learn with. It can't be, hey, I want to make money, so what's your problem? It's, hey, I want to help you solve your problem. Can you talk to me about it? Can you let me know? And I have to have this real feeling of wanting to help rather than what's in it for me. It's how can I help you? And I think if you approach any problem with how can I help you rather than how can you help me, right, you're much more likely to succeed.
I love that. I think that's really, really true. Because again, no one wants to feel as though, they're being forced or sold something. Those are the businesses that everyone avoids. But when you're asking, what problem of yours can I solve? And how can I solve it better? It's just such a flip of the switch. And not only I think does it make a more successful business, but like we've been talking about, one that's more aligned with your core values and does good in the world. I I love that discussion of ego too. It makes me think about my martial arts training as well, because there's a lot of dojos that have signs that say leave your ego at the door. And the simple reading that you can take away is don't hurt anybody else when you come to train. But I think the deeper meaning is that I've always considered training in martial arts and in boxing a very Zen experience, because it doesn't matter what you want things to be. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. The only thing that matters is the now, and reading the now and responding to the now so that you can be the best in that moment that you can be and utilize the skills that you have and learn. And so I think ego in that sense, you have to leave the ego at the door, because if you're thinking about what should be, or how do I look, or what is going to happen after this, or what happened before, you're not going to be really in your training. You're not going to be able to be in that zen of the present moment and play and
Yeah.
grow. So I love that. That's totally new take on it. In terms of ego, that's my light bulb moment for the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, ego is such a powerful part of Zen
Hmm.
and of who we are.
Hmm.
I don't know if it ever truly goes away fully, or even if we would really want it to,
Hmm.
because it is an ally, and it is something that we can use. And I would just say that to folks, like people think about ego, and it's like, oh, that person's so egotistical, and we think about that as somebody who is, very full of themselves.
Hmm.
But it's the opposite too. Somebody who is very down on themselves, that's ego as well. It's not, it's two sides of the same coin. And
Hmm.
where we want to be is somewhere in the middle, right? It's always about, right? In Zen, we talk about the middle way, not
Hmm.
going too far this way, not going too far that way, staying balanced, so that you can kind of walk that path of that middle way of knowing what you can do with your life. For myself, it's talking about work. In Zen, we have this concept of right livelihood, and that is that combination of work with my why,
Hmm.
right? And if we just have work and we just have a why, we all know lots of people who have a million ideas, right? And they just say, "Hey, I want to do this and I want to do that," and you just know this person's never going to do any of it because
Hmm.
they might have their why, but they're not willing yet to do the work,
Hmm.
and vice versa. We know people who go to work every day, complain about it, hate it, but they're not willing yet to connect it to the why. So when we are able and willing, and we're talking about risk here, and it's not always easy to do that, and I'll say things always are harder than how they seem. Things
Hmm.
always take longer than what they seem. So as much as you start, it's that much more important that you have that connection because that's what's going to keep you going. And I'm sure you've seen this, Jess, with the work that you're doing now, right? We all have these plans. I'd like to be here by this time, and if I'm not, then you just keep going. You figure out why, you learn, you adapt, and then you move forward. I'm sure it's the same thing with the martial arts, right? We always have to be able
Hmm.
to adapt. Um, but that's not a bad thing, right? Because if everything was just handed to us, you know, we wouldn't have the gift of learning.
Hmm.
And it doesn't always feel like that, but that's what it always is.
So true. So true. And I think one of the keys that I've found in a lot of avenues, both business and law and martial arts and personally, is that the more that you can lean into enjoying the daily journey, enjoying what you learn from the challenges and the opportunity to keep learning, that's how you can maintain that commitment. Because it is, you're right, it's always going to be hard and
Yep.
sometimes harder than others. It's just what what not only gave you that initial motivation to start on this journey, but also what are those big values, and what joy can you take in the moment to keep you going in the present moment, regardless of outcome. I think that's beautiful. So let's tie it up here for the audience. I have been inspired. I've been going into one of Oprah's books that I rediscovered recently called One Thing I Know for Sure. And so I'm going to steal that here. And for our listeners, whether they're founders or lawyers, tell me one thing that you know for sure, either about business growth or personal growth, Zen or life in general.
Okay. I love this. So this is a surprise question.
Hmm.
One thing I know for sure, and it goes against my Zen training because we're taught not to take anything for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say one thing I know for sure is that life is better together.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is this is not to be meant to be solitary existences. It's about relationships. It's about people that you have surrounding you, that love you, that trust you, and you trust them, because everything is so much harder alone. Whether that's at work, whether that's at home, um, building out that group of friends that you can just reach out to and speak to, even if you haven't spoken to them for years and you just pick up where you left off. I mean, that's huge. So I would say one thing I know for sure is that everybody needs a group of people surrounding them in their life.
How beautiful. I couldn't sum it up better. One thing I know for sure, Dean, is that I am so grateful for this conversation with you today. It's going to stay with me for a very long time. I hope it stays with our listeners too. But Thank you so much for
My
having
pleasure.
this conversation and sharing these insights and being so generous with your time today.
No, I thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I loved spending this time with you and with your audience, learning from you and listening to your own story and just having the opportunity to talk about the things that I love. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And so, for anyone listening, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more or work with you?
Yeah, I think that the best way right now is I have started this Zen to One, which, from a technology perspective, folks may recognize it as a play on Peter Thiel's book Zero to One, which is all about startups. And so my take is Zen to One because it also starts from a place of stillness, and you take that stillness into action consciously and deliberately. So if people want to reach out to me, best place is LinkedIn, which it's my name, so it's Dean Soukeras. They can just search for Dean. I'm sure you'll put it on the show notes as well. And they can find me, connect with me there, and send me a message if they'd like to connect.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much again,
Thank
Dean.
you.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week, and I hope you have moments of Zen and togetherness the rest of the week as well.
You too. I appreciate it, Jen.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jess.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we were talking about failure and fail fast. Tell me a little bit more about that, about how we can use fail fast as a way and a permission structure for play.
Yeah, and I think that fail fast is something that is tried and true in the technology community, and I think that it is universal. It can work in any part of your life. It's a matter of being willing and able to take risks. And some people are more amenable to taking risks than others. But I'll just say it doesn't have to be risky, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's asking you to go to Vegas and bet all your money on a slot machine. But maybe uh, some people are uncertain about visiting Europe, right? Because they're scared about, hey, it's a different culture, it's a different language. And I know people like that. And my instinct is always, you don't know until you try it, right? So minor personal idea because I do believe that travel and the experience of other cultures really helps people grow exponentially. So I would say, what part in your life, right? It could be work, it could be health, it could be diet, it could be anything that family, any place and anywhere in your life that you can try something different. Because when we just do the same thing over and over again, we get bored, we
Mhm.
get tired, we get lazy. Believe me, it's easy to just sit on the couch and watch 10 hours of Netflix. And there's space for that and there's times for that,
Mhm.
but you wouldn't look back and say, I'm glad I did that. Right. But if you went out and you went to hike some sort of, for me, like I'll go to the Catskills up in New York, or I'll go out east on Long Island to go to the wineries, that's the day you're going to remember. So it's about just taking these things that you wouldn't normally do and trying them. And it can be at work. And I honestly believe that everybody listening to this and every employee out there should have some sort of side hustle going on.
Mhm.
What can you do that is unique to you, your unique voice, because everybody has their own experiences that you can bring to the world? Because in today's world, and I just saw this the other day, a bunch of more layoffs at different companies where I know very talented, hardworking people being impacted and came out of the blue, and there's nothing to fall back on. So I think that we're leaving a world where we can just rely on somebody else, an employer, a manager, to have control over our livelihood, our future. And I know that's just been the way of things. But I think we're also in a world where we have videos and social sites and media and newsletters and blogs that give us all a platform that we can take advantage of to share our perspective. Now, people are scared to do what you're doing, right? Have this podcast, put yourself out there. And I'm sure it wasn't an easy choice at the time, but you did it. You tried it, you took a risk, and you get to speak to wonderful people on your podcast.
Sure.
You learn, they learn, your audience learns, and you created that because it was important to you and you wanted to bring yourself to the world and offer something that nobody else was, and you did.
Mhm.
And I'm sure everybody listening has something that they've been thinking about in the back of their mind, even if they won't admit it to anybody else, that they want to try. So that's the permission structure we're talking about. And you have to get to the point where you're going to say to yourself, let me try it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But you're going to learn so much in the process.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And thank you, Dean, too. I love that idea of focusing on what you uniquely not only enjoy but can bring to the world. I think that is so powerful and such a huge ripple effect too, in terms of not only the changes that it can make in your life, the positive changes, but everyone who sees you doing that or is benefiting from the things that you bring to the world. I think that's wonderful. Um, I don't want to take too much of your day to day, but I would love to know a couple more things. Maybe drawing on your practice and experience, particularly in Zen, and meditation. What are some practical tips that you can recommend for entrepreneurs or for lawyers who want to try to balance the pressures of scaling and growing their business or their practice and then still maintaining that alignment with their personal values and infusing their life with a sense of play and a sense of generous service?
Yeah. And I think that that's a great thought in bringing out who you are as a person
Mm-hmm.
and not who others want you to be, or even who you want you to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we pretend to be things that we're not doing ourselves any favor. And going back to burnout, that's also where burnout comes from, is when we try to do things for other people or for this concept of Dean should be this, Dean should like this, but that's not what I really want. So when you try to force yourself to do something for whatever reason, it could be external, it could be internal pressure. It goes back to your mind, and that your mind does lie to you. It tells you a story, and it wants you to believe that story that, hey, until this happens, I can't be happy. Well, no, that's not true. I could be happy right now. I'm choosing not to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so this goes back to from a Zen perspective of ego. And I
Mm-hmm.
like to say from the ego perspective, we could call ourselves terrible, right? I'm terrible at this. I'm no good at this. I can't do this. Like that's all ego. On the other side, we could say, hey, I'm the best at this. I'm great at this. Well, that's also ego. And ego likes to play that type of trick. And my Zen master would often call ego the trickster because ego would get in to try to trip you up, to try to get you to do things that were not aligned with who you are. And the good news there is that, right, if you go back to different mythologies, right, the trickster liked to play tricks, but the tricks always taught a lesson. And ego always teaches a lesson. You cannot get to enlightenment in Zen or liberation in Zen without the ego. It is your best ally in trying to get to where you want to be because it will show you where you don't want to go and where you don't want to be. So, yes, you're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to try things that are not for you, but that's how you learn what is. So, when we're talking about trying things new and taking risks, if you try to do it for the wrong reasons, it's most likely not going to work. Like I would not say to somebody who comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to be rich, so I'm going to start a business." Well, it's not going to succeed. Like that's not the motivation that is going to keep you going. It's not the motivation that is going to keep you iterating and changing the concept and talking to people and learning from them. You have to bring this natural curiosity, this empathy, this compassion to the people you work with, the customers you have, the people you want to learn with. It can't be, hey, I want to make money, so what's your problem? It's, hey, I want to help you solve your problem. Can you talk to me about it? Can you let me know? And I have to have this real feeling of wanting to help rather than what's in it for me. It's how can I help you?
Mhm.
And I think if you approach any problem with how can I help you rather than how can you help me, right, you're much more likely to succeed.
I love that. I think that's really, really true. Because again, no one wants to feel as though, they're being forced or sold something. Those are the businesses that everyone avoids. But when you're asking, what problem of yours can I solve and how can I solve it better? It's just such a flip of the switch. And not only I think does it make a more successful business, but like we've been talking about, one that's more aligned with your core values and does good in the world. I I love that discussion of ego too. It makes me think about my martial arts training as well, because there's a lot of dojos that have signs that say leave your ego at the door, and the simple reading that you can take away is don't hurt anybody else when you come to train. But I think the deeper meaning is that I've always considered training in martial arts and in boxing a very Zen experience, because it doesn't matter what you want things to be. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. The only thing that matters is the now, and reading the now and responding to the now so that you can be the best in that moment that you can be and utilize the skills that you have and learn. And so I think ego in that sense, you have to leave the ego at the door, because if you're thinking about what should be, or how do I look, or what is going to happen after this, or what happened before, you're not going to be really in your training. You're not going to be able to be in that zen of the present moment and play and grow. So I love that. That's totally new take on it. In terms of ego, that's my light bulb moment for the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, ego is such a powerful part of Zen
Hmm.
and of who we are.
Hmm.
I don't know if it ever truly goes away fully, or even if we would really want it to,
Hmm.
because it is an ally, and it is something that we can use. And I would just say that to folks, like people think about ego, and it's like, oh, that person's so egotistical, and we think about that as somebody who is, very full of themselves.
Hmm.
But it's the opposite too. Somebody who is very down on themselves, that's ego as well. It's not, it's two sides of the same coin. And
Hmm.
where we want to be is somewhere in the middle, right? It's always about, right? In Zen, we talk about the middle way, not
Hmm.
going too far this way, not going too far that way, staying balanced, and so that you can kind of walk that path of that middle way of knowing what you can do with your life. For myself, it's talking about work. In Zen, we have this concept of right livelihood, and that is that combination of work with my why,
Hmm.
right? And if we just have work and we just have a why, we all know lots of people who have a million ideas, right? And they just say, "Hey, I want to do this and I want to do that," and you just know this person's never going to do any of it
Hmm.
because they might have their why, but they're not willing yet to do the work.
Hmm.
And vice versa. We know people who go to work every day, complain about it, hate it, but they're not willing yet to connect it to the why. So when we are able and willing, and we're talking about risk here, and it's not always easy to do that, and I'll say things always are harder than how they seem. Things
Hmm.
always take longer than what they seem. So as much as you start, it's that much more important that you have that connection because that's what's going to keep you going. And I'm sure you've seen this, Jess, with the work that you're doing now, right? We all have these plans. I'd like to be here by this time, and if I'm not, then you just keep going. You figure out why, you learn, you adapt, and then you move forward. I'm sure it's the same thing with the martial arts, right? We always have to be able
Hmm.
to adapt. Um, but that's not a bad thing, right? Because if everything was just handed to us, you know, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have the gift of learning.
Hmm.
And it doesn't always feel like that, but that's what it always is.
So true. So true. And I think one of the keys that I've found in a lot of avenues, both business and law and martial arts and personally, is that the more that you can lean into enjoying the daily journey, enjoying what you learn from the challenges and the opportunity to keep learning, that's how you can maintain that commitment. Because it is, you're right, it's always going to be hard and
Yep.
sometimes harder than others. It's just what what not only gave you that initial motivation to start on this journey, but also what are those big values, and what joy can you take in the moment to keep you going in the present moment, regardless of outcome. I think that's beautiful. So let's tie it up here for the audience. I have been inspired. I've been going into one of Oprah's books that I rediscovered recently called One Thing I Know for Sure. And so I'm going to steal that here. And for our listeners, whether they're founders or lawyers, tell me one thing that you know for sure, either about business growth or personal growth, Zen or life in general.
Okay, I love this. So this is a surprise question.
Hmm.
One thing I know for sure, and it goes against my Zen training because we're taught not to take anything for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but I would say one thing I know for sure is that life is better together.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is this is not to be meant to be solitary existences. It's about relationships. It's about people that you have surrounding you, that love you, that trust you, and you trust them, because everything is so much harder alone. Whether that's at work, whether that's at home, um, building out that group of friends that you can just reach out to and speak to, even if you haven't spoken to them for years and you just pick up where you left off. I mean, that's huge. So I would say one thing I know for sure is that everybody needs a group of people surrounding them in their life.
How beautiful. I couldn't sum it up better. One thing I know for sure, Dean, is that I am so grateful for this conversation with you today. It's going to stay with me for a very long time. I hope it stays with our listeners too. But thank you so much for
My
having
pleasure.
this conversation and sharing these insights and being so generous with your time today.
No, I thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I loved spending this time with you and with your audience, learning from you and listening to your own story and just having the opportunity to talk about the things that I love. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And so, for anyone listening, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more or work with you?
Yeah, I think that the best way right now is I have started this Zen to One, which from a technology perspective, folks may recognize it as a play on Peter Thiel's book Zero to One, which is
Mhm.
all about startups. And so my take is Zen to One because it also starts from a place of stillness and you take that stillness into action consciously and deliberately. So if people want to reach out to me, best place is LinkedIn, which it's my name. So it's Dean Soukeras. They can just search for Dean. I'm sure you'll put it on the show notes as well. And they can find me, connect with me there, and send me a message if they'd like to connect.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much again,
Thank
Dean.
you.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week, and I hope you have moments of Zen and togetherness the rest of the week as well.
You too. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jess.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining me on the Legal Athlete Podcast. If you're ready to take your mental game to the next level, let's connect. Want me to speak to your group or team? Or are you ready for one-on-one trial fight camp coaching to perform at your best when it matters most? Reach out to me with a direct message on LinkedIn or through my website at thelegalathlete.com. Until next time, remember that the best version of yourself isn't some future version. It's the you who makes your daily choices. So make great ones. Make the ones that keep you on that champion fighter journey, building a record and a life you love.